because she's a black woman, or at least I thought she was. She clearly has black children. So are you saying you don't mind your children growing up in a society where they cannot be taught black?
And Nicki makes a lot of cash. Not as much as Michael Dell, not quite.
Nicki Minaj has many, many issues that would lead one to believe that those issues are possibly the reason that she's cozying up to MAGA.
Nicki don't need to worry about Don. She need to be with damn Don Lennon. Nicki Minaj need to be worried about Chris Hansen. She need to be
Something just shattered in hip-hop, and nobody saw it coming. This isn't about a single tweet. This isn't about a flashing headline. This isn't even politics anymore. This is about betrayal. Because when a woman who rose on the backbone of black culture, when a voice that once roared against oppression suddenly applauds the very system she once condemned, people don't just get confused, they feel used. And tonight, that silence finally cracked. Under the glaring spotlight, MIC in hand, with nothing to lose, Katt Williams didn't blink. No prelude, no laughs, no safety net. He struck immediately, straight to the heart. He asked the question everyone avoided. How does a black immigrant woman, raising black children, stand beside a movement accused of erasing black history, dismissing black pain, and calling centuries of suffering an overreaction? This wasn't presented as debate. This was a reckoning, because the internet never forgets. It remembers when she said, "Trump was evil." It remembers her tears for families torn apart by borders. It remembers her vow to never ride that bandwagon. And yet, here we are. What shifted? Belief, or benefit? As Katt peeled back layer after layer, the audience didn't laugh. They gasped, because this wasn't satire. This was an autopsy of character. Every name dropped made the air colder. Every replayed clip made the silence heavier. And with every contradiction unveiled, one truth became inescapable. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't growth. This was strategy. And when the MIC drew close to his lips for the final line, the question wasn't whether Nicki Minaj changed sides, it was whether she sold out, or if this was the plan all along. This video reflects public commentary and reactions to recent statements discussed by Katt Williams about Nicki Minaj. Views shared are opinions for discussion, not statements of fact.
Hello guys, I'm with my favorite president, the best president of all time.
The moment Katt Williams stepped onto that stage, the air shifted. This wasn't a comedy show. This wasn't satire. This wasn't entertainment. This was confrontation. With the microphone mere inches from his lips, Katt didn't pace. He didn't smile. He didn't soften the crowd. He locked eyes with them and went straight for the fracture. The moment the culture cracked, he named it clearly. This wasn't political commentary. This was cultural betrayal. Katt reminded everyone who Nicki Minaj used to be. Not the brand, not the superstar, but the voice. The woman who once stood as a shield for immigrants. The artist who spoke boldly against injustice. The public figure who vowed she would never side with Trump or any movement surrounding him. And yet, according to Katt, that vow didn't just fade, it flipped overnight. What shook the audience wasn't only the change, it was how fast it happened. One moment condemnation, the next applause. One moment outrage, the next alignment. He framed it as a question that cut deeper the longer it lingered. What moves faster, beliefs or benefits? Katt leaned into the contradiction. A black immigrant woman, raising black children, a career rooted in black expression, and yet aligned with a movement accused of erasing black history, dismissing racial trauma, and calling centuries of suffering an exaggeration. Katt didn't accuse outright. He didn't attack. He lied the narrative, reminding the crowd that this movement didn't appear in a vacuum. That debates over education, history, and identity weren't abstract concepts, they carried real consequences. And when Nicki Minaj chose a side, whether by intent or by design, she became inseparably tied to those consequences. Then came what Katt called the memory test. He laid out the receipts for everyone to hear. Past interviews, old statements, moments when Nicki Minaj called Trump evil, when she wept over families torn apart at the border, when she promised she would never ride that bandwagon. According to Katt, this wasn't growth. This was abandonment. Not evolution, but a transaction, A shift less about ideology and more about protection, less about belief and more about positioning. The crowd didn't erupt. The room went silent, and that silence spoke louder than applause ever could. At that moment, Katt didn't escalate. He validated a truth that many had felt quietly but never voiced. He made it clear, the disappointment wasn't isolated. The confusion wasn't random. Across the culture, people were asking the same heavy questions, quietly, publicly. And then, another voice entered the conversation, layering the tension further.
You know, we love her music. I've spoken to her several times. You know, collectively, I feel like we were a little bit disappointed with her, but I feel like she needs to spend a lot of time with Mr. Bruce Springsteen. She needs to go sit on his lap and let him speak some words of wisdom to her heart. Because yes.
That clip didn't shout, it sighed, and in that sigh was a collective heartbreak. The commentator didn't cancel Nicki Minaj, didn't attack her legacy, didn't deny her influence. Instead, they did something far more piercing. They withdrew belief. Disappointment lands harder than outrage, because outrage still cares. Katt seized on that energy. He told the crowd that disappointment doesn't come from strangers. It comes from those who expected more, from fans who defended her, from communities who amplified her voice long before it became profitable. Then he pushed it further. He highlighted how the backlash exploded when children and politics entered the equation. How Nicki Minaj's statements shifted from personal opinion into cultural messaging, and how public figures like DL Hughley responded, not softly, but publicly. Katt didn't repeat DL's jokes. He didn't need to. He distilled the sentiment behind them. If you want to lecture the public on values, you can't ignore the controversies in your own backyard. Delivered with dark precision, the crowd reacted exactly as expected. Laughter tangled with unease, because humor only lands when it cuts into reality. Then Katt shifted tone again. He brought up the LGBTQ+ community, not as a side note, not as a footnote, but as the foundation. He reminded everyone that Nicki Minaj's rise wasn't accidental. Her concerts, her chart dominance, her cultural reach, all built in part by a fan base that saw her as a symbol of expression and freedom, a community that felt represented. And now, according to critics, that same community felt dismissed. Katt framed it as a painful irony, a career lifted by the people now being rejected by the very artists they supported. To him, this wasn't politics, it was abandonment. He said the word the audience felt immediately, sold out. Not whispered, not implied, spoken aloud. The applause came quickly, but it wasn't celebration. It was sharp, defensive, as if the crowd was clapping to shield themselves from the truth settling in. Katt didn't linger there. He moved on to the moment that. It pushed the controversy from mere debate into full confrontation. The Dawn Lemon exchange. Katt broke it down. Nicki Minaj's attack on a critic didn't just trigger a response, it exposed a pattern. A pattern where anyone daring to question her shift was instantly labeled an enemy, where pushback was twisted into persecution. According to Katt, this defensiveness didn't show strength, it revealed fragility. And that's when the final voice of part 1 entered, not with disappointment, but with raw fury, leaving the room silent and unsettled.
Look, this is what I'll say to Nicki Minaj. I normally don't respond to things like this, but F it. I'm going to do it this time. I think Nicki Minaj has made it very clear how she feels about African Americans in this country. I don't think she's one of them, obviously. And she should, under Trump's rules, she should be deported because I don't think, reportedly, that she is a legal citizen here. She is undocumented. And so she has shown her disdain for African Americans. So why are you supporting her? Why are you buying her records? She's also supporting, I have lots of gay friends who love Nicki Minaj. Why are you supporting?
That was more than analysis. That was an ultimatum. Katt let his words linger, letting the tension thicken before closing part 1 with his most disturbing insight yet. He told the audience that when relevance starts to slip, power becomes irresistible. When applause fades, alliances harden. And movements like MAGA don't just attract believers, they hunt for opportunity. He stepped closer to the mic, lowered his voice, and left the crowd with a question that refused to leave the room. Was this truly belief, or was it business? As the lights dimmed, one thing was undeniable. This story wasn't ending here. The doubt had already taken root. What began as disappointment in part 1 now mutated into something heavier, a confrontation with consequences. Because when power shifts, silence becomes complicity. And when public figures pivot, the ripples cannot be contained. Katt Williams sensed it. He let the moment breathe. Then he pressed forward, not louder, but sharper. His voice didn't rise, it tightened, slicing through the room. That's when the tone shifted from observation to indictment. He told the crowd that when people talk about freedom of opinion, they often overlook a crucial truth. Influence multiplies impact. A celebrity doesn't just speak, they signal. And when that signal aligns with a movement accused of dismissing black pain and marginalizing queer voices, the fallout is inevitable. Katt didn't accuse Nicki Minaj of intent. He accused her of awareness. He said she knew exactly how her words would land. That her platform made neutrality impossible. That once you step into politics, especially politics tied to identity, you inherit the consequences whether you embrace them or not. Then Katt highlighted the moment everything spiraled. The church scene, the Dawn Lemon exchange, the backlash that erupted afterward. Katt framed it as a turning point, not because of what was said, but how the criticism was handled. Instead of engaging, Nicki Minaj attacked. Instead of clarifying, she deflected. And instead of addressing the core issue, she targeted the messenger. That's when DL Hughley entered the narrative, not merely as a comedian, but as a mirror, reflecting the contradictions, the defensiveness, and the fragility that had taken root.
Whole scene that unfolded at this church.
Right.
You saw this, right? Nicki Minaj going after Don Lemon. You see this, like for
Nicki Minaj,
for reporting
it
it.
was so funny to me. People hate. It's so funny how many on the right hate. They hate transgender and gay people more than they do pedophiles. That's amazing to me. Nicki don't need to worry about Don. She need to be with damn Don Lemon. Nicki.
The reaction was instant. Laughter erupted, and then froze, because DL Hughley's words weren't just jokes. They were indictments wrapped in humor. He wasn't debating ideology, he was exposing contradiction, highlighting how outrage was selectively applied, how some found it easier to attack critics than face uncomfortable truths within their own circles. Katt didn't repeat the punchline. He explained the punch. He told the audience that when someone preaches values publicly, their private associations inevitably come under scrutiny. Moral authority isn't declared, it's earned. And once questioned, it cannot be reclaimed through deflection. He framed DL's comment not as cruelty, but as context, a reminder that outrage doesn't erase reality, and reality, according to Katt, was becoming impossible to ignore. The crowd shifted, no longer restless, but alert, tense. That's when Katt pivoted again, away from jokes, away from individual conflicts, toward the larger machinery behind the shift. Because what if this wasn't random? What if this wasn't impulsive? What if this wasn't even personal? That's when he introduced a theory that chilled the room, a theory suggesting Nicki Minaj wasn't just choosing MAGA, MAGA was choosing her.
That Donald Trump and the conservative movement in this country selected Nicki Minaj because they needed a replacement for Candace Owens. Remember, Candace Owens has fallen out of favor with the Republican Party and the mainstream conservative white agenda because she's now exposing the Zionist control of the conservative movement and of the United States government. In fact, Art, I would argue that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I believe, by the Zionist movement. We're going to distance ourselves from Candace, and this is Donald Trump, the Republican Party, and the mainstream white conservative movement. We got to find another black woman. We got to find another black woman who can compete with Candace Owens nationally and internationally to bring attention away from Candace Owens, who is highlighting the Israeli influence on American.
The words didn't just land, they sank deep. Katt paused, letting the implication linger, before unpacking it slowly, carefully, like someone dismantling a device they knew could explode. He explained that movements don't just spread ideas, they recruit symbols, faces that soften narratives, voices that legitimize positions that might otherwise be rejected. And when one figure loses credibility, another rises, not as a leader, but as a shield. Katt made it clear, this wasn't about Nicki Minaj being powerless. Quite the opposite. It was about power recognizing opportunity, about influence becoming currency, and how alignment isn't always ideological. Sometimes it's transactional. He described it as political theater with cultural stakes. Nicki Minaj didn't need to write policy. She didn't need to lead rallies. All she had to do was stand there, visible, vocal, validated. And suddenly, the movement could point and say, "See, even she agrees." The audience didn't cheer. They processed, because the theory didn't accuse Nicki of ignorance. It accused her of usefulness. Katt emphasized that tokenization isn't accidental. It's strategic, especially when race, celebrity, and controversy intersect. And in his view, Nicki checked every box: global reach, cultural credibility, controversy-resistant fan base. Perfect. He reminded the room that Candace Owens didn't lose favor because she stopped being conservative. She lost favor because she became uncontrollable, because she spoke out of turn, because she disrupted narratives instead of reinforcing them. Nicki Minaj, according to this framing, did the opposite. She stayed on script. Then Katt delivered the line that silenced the room: "This isn't representation. This is replacement." He said it calmly, and that calm made it devastating. He went on to explain that when movements elevate symbols, they don't care about consistency. They care about compliance, about who can deliver the message without questioning the machine behind it. Katt didn't say Nicki Minaj was forced. He said she was selected. And selection comes with benefits: protection, amplification, forgiveness, but it also carries a cost. Because once you become the face, you absorb the backlash. And when critics speak, they're no longer debating policy, they're confronting you. That's when Katt circled back to the audience. He asked them to consider the pattern: the speed of the shift, the defensiveness toward critics, the silence toward supporters who felt betrayed, the alignment with narratives previously condemned. He didn't say it was wrong. He said it was revealing. Katt leaned into the mic one last time, lowering his voice as if letting the audience in on a secret they already sensed but hadn't named. "When belief changes overnight," he said, "it's usually not belief." The lights dimmed, and the question left hanging wasn't whether Nicki Minaj believed in MAGA. It was whether MAGA believed in her, or if they just needed her. The real question: did she understand the cost? Because there are moments in culture when debate ends and memory begins. Moments when statements stop being opinions and become historical markers. Katt Williams understood this, and this is where his tone changed for the final time. Not louder. Not heavier. He told the audience that everything discussed so far, the flip, the backlash, the alliances, the symbolism, all led to one moment, one appearance, one statement. One statement that many felt crossed a line that could never be uncrossed: the Turning Point USA event. Katt described it as the moment when confusion hardened into conviction. Where speculation gave way to clarity, because it wasn't spoken in anger. It wasn't said under pressure. It was delivered calmly, on a stage, with applause waiting on the other side. According to critics, this wasn't Nicki Minaj reacting, this was Nicki Minaj choosing. Katt replayed the arguments circulating online, that teaching Black history makes white children uncomfortable, that emphasizing Black pride somehow diminishes others, that telling the truth about America's past creates imbalance. He paused, letting the words settle like a weight in the room, then asked the question that fractured the crowd. If truth makes someone uncomfortable, who is that truth really protecting? He reminded the audience that Black history isn't an elective. It isn't propaganda. It isn't revenge. It's context. And context, once removed, doesn't vanish, it distorts. Katt made it clear. People weren't angry because Nicki Minaj had an opinion, they were angry because of what that opinion erased. That's when the final voice entered, not with sarcasm, not with humor, but with gravity, leaving the room stunned and silent.
There's something to the effect that it's not just that we tell Black children to feel proud of themselves, but it's like we're doing that, and at the same time, we're telling other children not to feel proud of themselves. And so I guess she was alluding to this false narrative that the conservatives are putting out there, that teaching Black children Black history and teaching white children the true history of America is somehow going to make white children feel bad about themselves. That bothered me because she's a Black woman, or at least I thought she was. She clearly has black children. So are you saying you don't mind your children growing up in a society where they cannot be taught black history or the true history of America because some people feel it offends the self-esteem of white children? And this is so hypocritical, Art, because we've been in America 400 years at least under British North American control. And look at how the self-esteem and self-worth and self-value of black children has been and continues to be compromised for the benefit of the white child. And yet you're telling me that to implement a curriculum of corrective history where you're not insulting white people, you're not denigrating white people, you're simply making sure white children understand that the foundation of this country was laid and built and cemented on the genocide of Native Americans and the enslavement of African people. And not just the enslavement of African people, the dehumanization.
The room didn't react, it absorbed. Because this wasn't a soundbite. This was an indictment of logic itself. Dr. Umar wasn't debating policy. He was questioning identity, asking whether proximity to power had overridden responsibility to truth. Katt let the words linger, then explained why that clip hit so hard, because it wasn't abstract. Nicki Minaj isn't just a public figure, she's a mother. A black mother, raising black children in a world that already struggles to define them without distortion. And when someone in that position downplays the importance of history, critics argue it sends a message far beyond politics. It tells children what parts of themselves are negotiable. Katt emphasized that no one was asking Nicki Minaj to be an activist. No one was demanding perfection. But when influence meets education, silence becomes a stance, and statements become legacy. He reminded the audience that America's history isn't neutral. Now he turned to Kevin Hart, noting how the narrative is often packaged and sanitized repeatedly to protect those in power. Teaching the truth isn't about blame, it's about accuracy. And accuracy, according to critics, was exactly what her remarks threatened. Exactly what Nicki Minaj's remarks threatened. This was the moment the conversation shifted, from outrage to mourning. Katt described it as cultural grief. The instant fans realized someone they defended no longer represents what they believed in. When admiration turns into distance, when loyalty becomes conditional. He framed social media not as a mob, but as a mirror. Fans weren't just attacking Nicki, they were warning each other, using her as a case study, a cautionary tale about what happens when relevance fades and power becomes tempting. He framed it carefully. Not everyone who joins MAGA does so out of belief. Some do it because the spotlight is guaranteed, the defense is aggressive, and loyalty is loud. Katt didn't claim Nicki Minaj needed saving. He said she had made a decision, and decisions don't need defense, they need accountability. He addressed the idea that Nicki was being misunderstood, that her words were taken out of context, that critics were overreacting. Then he dismantled that argument with one sentence: context doesn't change impact. He told the audience that when people explain harm away instead of confronting it, they reveal more about their priorities than their intentions. Listening to it, they revealed more about their priorities than their intentions. The room stayed silent. This wasn't entertainment anymore, this was closure. Katt guided the crowd through the final emotional shift, from disbelief to acceptance. Nicki Minaj, the artist many grew up with, wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She wasn't manipulated. She was strategic. He said it slowly, deliberately, clearly, she's not confused. She's calculated. And with that, the last illusion collapsed. Katt leaned forward, almost whispering, ensuring no one could later claim they misheard him. This isn't belief. This is business. The lights dimmed, and the story ended the only way it could, without answers, but with a reckoning. Because the final question wasn't whether Nicki Minaj believes in MAGA. The question was darker: was she reading a script, or helping write one? This is where it stopped being entertainment. What we just witnessed wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a bad quote. It wasn't the internet being dramatic. It was a moment that snapped trust in real time. And once that kind of trust breaks, it doesn't quietly come back. For years, people defended her, excused the contradictions, explained away the silence, gave the benefit of the doubt because legacy mattered. But tonight made one thing impossible to ignore: This wasn't confusion. This was choice. A choice to stand with power instead of people. A choice to trade history for comfort. A choice to accept applause from spaces that once rejected everything she claimed to represent. And that is why this hurts deeper than anger ever could. Because betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the voices you trusted, from the figures you elevated, from the icons you believed would never cross certain lines. When that happens, outrage fades fast. And what replaces it is grief. The internet isn't asking for apologies. It isn't demanding explanations. It's asking a quieter, heavier question. Who is this really for? Because when the dust settles, relevance fades, and the cameras move on, history doesn't forget alignment. It remembers who showed up, where they stood, and what they were willing to sacrifice to stay visible. And maybe that's the tragedy in all of this. Not that someone chose a side, but that they chose it knowing exactly who would be left behind. Now, the culture is watching, not reacting, not debating, just watching. Watching to see if this was a moment of belief, or a calculated performance wrapped in patriotism and profit. Because once the mask slips, it never fully goes back on. And the silence that follows isn't confusion, it's recognition. Drop your thoughts below, not the loud ones, the honest ones.